Hello, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours. As always, this is where we answer all your questions, or at least give it our best shot about media and production 24/7. If you're watching on YouTube, you can enter questions by going to the QR code you can see right there in the bottom of the screen. If you're not on the QR code system, you can just navigate to askofficehours.global, and it'll do exactly the same thing for you. You can put your questions in. Then everybody who's in the Mukana interface can vote on those questions. And we talked about the ones that get the most votes, most off the top of the show. It's Thursday, much of the planet. That's editing day. We're talking about editing. We're going to be talking to a very successful YouTube creator in a moment. But for right now, it's time for your questions. So let's dive in. Alexander, what do our viewers and listeners have on their minds today?
All right, first question from Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York. Morning, everyone. Thoughts on the new Hollyland Pyro S? Worth production testing or nah?
And we're going to start with Courtney Gooden this morning. Courtney?
Well, it's certainly affordable. I checked the price of a transmitter-receiver pair is $700, which is really inexpensive for supposedly a high quality. This is supposedly 4K video transmission from your camera to up to 4 different receivers. Unfortunately, uses unlicensed bands. That's where you may run into trouble. Uses 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. It's dual band. Whether it switches between the two, unknown. Fairly low latency, 0.05 seconds, which is 5/100ths of a second. I wish they'd put it in milliseconds. It'd be 550 milliseconds. Is that right? About a frame of latency, so that's good. It takes both HDMI and SDI. It looks very sexy. It has that those triple antennas for dealing with multipath transmission between the receiver and the transmitter. So it remains to be seen. I haven't used one. Whether they'll give Teradek a run for their money, it's definitely cheaper priced, and it will handle 4K. I'd probably rather see really better range on a 1080p than a 4K transmission on the set, for monitoring.
Jeffrey Powers.
So yeah, I did take a look at the Pyro S. It was at NAB. It's part of a system. They have the Pyro H, the Pyro S, and then the Pyro 7, which is probably the more interesting of the 3 items there. Yes, the Pyro S is... It can go the length of a football field, but do you really want to put it in a production with the length of a football field? Maybe if you're doing the on-field celebration, you need something wireless for that, then something like that will come into play. But if you've just got static cameras, of course, you're going to run all those feeds. With the Pyro S and the Pyro 7, which is a handheld monitor, 7-inch monitor, you'll be able to switch between different shots. So you can give one of them to like a colorist. You could give one of them to just somebody that's looking at continuity. And then they can switch back and forth between the cameras. Pretty impressive. I did do a video up on my channel for that. The Pyro S is decent, but I wouldn't use it in a big stadium with a lot of phones going off.
Alex.
I've learned not to... Hollyland is, coming up the speed. You kind of see this trend where you have a company that starts with stuff that a little edgy. They make some money, they start figuring things out, and they start getting better at what they do. And so I think what you're seeing is Hollyland slowly moving up the food chain, with technology. A lot of this wireless technology at some level, at the VisLink level, which is what we used at NAB, that's at a whole different scale, right? And that's what you would use in a stadium. You'd never use anything like this, or you wouldn't, and you probably wouldn't use a Teradek, in a stadium either. So VisLink is at a whole different level. But when you talk about these kind of 2.4 based transmission, that's becoming a fairly commoditized product, and Hollyland is starting to kind of come up that area. Some thoughts on what they're showing here. This is the transmitters here. A couple things. One is, why would you need, you're probably asking, why do you need 1 transmitter and 4 receivers? A lot of times we need different zones. So we want to have 1 transmitter and we want 4 different places so that if it breaks up in one place, we pick it up somewhere else. So that's one thing. This is very optimistic. That's probably, I would use a Hollyland with maybe 80 feet. That's what I would do, and it only in a pretty good condition.
Am I presuming the LOS is line of sight range?
Yeah, line of sight.
If there's nothing between you and
if you're in a salt flat, it's 1,300 feet. You know, it's perfectly flat and
no
metal.
RF. Perfect.
This is 0.5 is not insignificant. So they did this because what they don't want to say is that's a frame and a half. So a frame and a half of latency is a lot of latency when it comes to trying to resync those cameras. If some of the cameras are wired and some of the cameras aren't. This is going to be, this has its own issues between going through things. It's great that you can put a feature up there that says UVC and RTMP streaming. UVC is kind of interesting. That means you could just turn this into a webcam. RTMP, it's kind of like, well, at what quality? Like, is it actually going to be viewable at that? This is great. I would love, if you're doing this though at 4K, you really want to see 60 because a lot of times you're using these for sports environments. And then the auto hopping, remember we talked about this yesterday, that's going to eat up a lot of your frequency in general at an event. So, those are some breakdowns of some of the, I haven't used this, but those are the breakdowns of the specs that they have there. I'd love to test it. I think it's worth testing. I think that, you have to always look at these things through, again, we talked about this yesterday, what product works for what mission. So for a very cost-effective, something that you want to do as a creator where you're not going more than 20, 30, 40 feet, this could be really useful. This could be a very useful and very cost-effective way to do it as a backup to something else. Like we got to throw another wireless camera in there I know that I have somewhere else to go. This is really good. For a football game, probably not. And maybe a high school football game, and again, you're looking at how to send, you put that transmitter up high enough, you're going to get line of sight everywhere and having, a high school coverage team having 4 wireless cameras is a pretty cool setup, to cover a football game and saying that, we have to have something much more expensive or we can't do it isn't really, I think the right solution. So I think there's lots of uses for the Hollyland. Again, it's come up to speed, but I think you could use it. They're definitely designing this for more than just being on-set review. This is designed for, a certain level of live production.
Alex, do you or anybody else on the panel know what the price point is? What MSRP is?
I think we talked about it being $700 for both.
$700
for
both
a
sides.
transmitter receiver pair.
Yeah.
Wow.
So to put it in perspective, a Teradeck, a bolt, even entry level bolt is probably I think $2,500 or something in that ballpark. So it's significantly less expensive. And again, if you were doing high school games or some low level other things, I think that you can afford some of the risk that might be there in a wireless camera, and it's not bad for people coming up to speed to see what breakup looks like. So I think that I think it's a really great product inside of, as long as you're using it for what it's good for, and you're not trying to take a Chevette out and pull a trailer.
Courtney, you had a last comment?
Yeah, I think it's not really aimed at the live video market at all. I think it's aimed at a monitoring situation for monitoring camcorders and a recording situation where you're recording your stuff, and for onset monitoring. That's why you see it. And these Teradecks are used a lot for that. They're not, in fact, they're primarily used for that. They're not really used that much for live transmission. So it's where reliability isn't crucial, because you're recording in the camera, and this is just for reference. That's why there's one transmitter with 4 receivers, so that you can put receivers, and that's also why there's the streaming capability of it, because a lot of people are monitoring production in remote locations these days, and you have to be streamed. Although it's live streamed from the camera, it's not the primary source of video. You're not saving that output. It's only for reference. So I think it's aimed at that market, which is a big market for onset monitoring, and it would give productions a chance to do, being able to cut the cables so they can do on-set monitoring a lot easier to multiple different locations for a lot cheaper than they are doing now.
Alex, you had another follow-up?
Yeah, I might beg to differ a little bit, only because Teradecks are, 99% of every Teradeck I've ever seen has been for a live event. So it's not like I see them in film. I see them in film sets.
Maybe that's just because you work primarily.
I know, but film sets are film is such a tiny market, compared to corporate and broadcast and everything else. It is the number of film purchases is just such it's almost it's a minuscule market, like compared to the everything else that's being done with video transmission. And so I don't think that you could build. I don't think you can build a low cost solution around film as your primary market. I just don't think that they'd sell enough. And they listed here, this is like for film, live events, ENG, EFP applications. And I think they definitely don't want to say, hey, we're not ready for film. And I think film is a market for them. But I think that the corporate broadcast market is a pretty big one. I mean, because that's what Teradek's market is. Teradek is their primary market is, corporate and independent broadcast. I can't. Anyway,
I know Smoker. He didn't start that way.
It didn't start that way, but that's primarily where the money is.
We had a good discussion. Let's move on to the next question.
Next question is from Sean Johnson in New York. Are there any apps for PC other than vMix that are similar to Zoom ISO for getting clean NDI/SDI feeds of Zoom participants?
Alex, start us off.
Clean feeds you can use you need to use Zoom rooms with NDI to make that actually work. Andy says also that we have Pro AV Zoom rooms in beta and to send via SDI more advanced. So you can use Pro AV for the more advanced solutions for Zoom ISO. Third-party apps have access to our raw data that run on the PC, include vMix, Wirecast, Captivate, which is under New Blue, Unreal Engine with the Zoom plugin. It says we also integrate with Epiphan Connect, which we can send Zoom feeds via SRT to applications from the cloud. The one thing I will say is that the question for me is, what are you trying to do with those NDI or SDI feeds? So you can grab them. If you're trying to record them, I think there's a lot of options there, and I think some of these make sense. If you are trying to deliver them to something else, I would recommend thinking beyond the PC answer. I'd really recommend a Mac Mini with a card that does that. If you're trying to deliver it to your show, if you're trying to deliver it to an external show for an event, I would use something that was only doing that thing. But if you are trying to feed it back into something that's there, and the only reason I ask is because you said for clean NDI, SDI feeds. So I think that you're trying to send it out somewhere. And if I was sending it out somewhere, I wouldn't use an edit package to do that. Now you could use, again, the Pro AV Zoom rooms to just pump it out via SDI. So that's another way to do high density outputs. But I think that the Pro AV or the Zoom ISO on a Mac would be a way to do that. But the Pro AV should probably do it with Zoom rooms. It depends on how many outputs you need. But that's in beta. But if you're trying to deliver something, I wouldn't use an edit package to do that.
Let's go on to the next question.
Next question is a QR code from Marielle Jusha, Miera, and Wablo. When preparing for Degree Absolute, how would you position the cameras and the lights, China balls, to greatest effect?
And Jeffrey Powers is going to start us off. Jeffrey?
So the biggest question was, we weren't exactly sure what Degree Absolute was, but I'm basing it on the question, because the question came in yesterday, but we didn't have time to answer it, and they were talking about actually doing a graduation. When you talk about China balls, that's something that you wouldn't really have in a big hall. So my guess is that you're doing this as a live stream for people in a small room. And when it comes to what I'm thinking Degree Absolute is when the degree gets passed from the person that's giving it out to the person that is receiving it. When you do that, you have lots of people passing through in two different directions, and so having a camera pointed from the crowd, from the graduates' point of view, gets really tough to actually see that point of handing it off. So I would probably do it at an angle as high as possible. If you're in like a stadium, usually there's a second tier, like a balcony tier, that you could put a camera up into. Photographers would always go underneath, so it would always point up to see the handoff. But that is where I would take it. As for lighting, depending on the room, if it's like a small, like a gymnasium or something like that, then lighting, that's going to be tough to do any type of lighting like that. But if it's in a small room, yeah, definitely set up some sort of mood lighting and make it look good.
Alex?
Yeah, one tip for questions for us is try to be as low level in the questions. If you use like terms, it makes it harder for us to understand what we need to do rather than just say exactly what you're trying to do. So if you put some questions in or put another question in, try not to use things like degree absolute or anything kind of over the top, there, because we don't know what that means. I did ask ChatGPT 4.0 what this meant, and it said degree absolute, a term often associated with high stakes or critical scenarios, suggests an environment where everything is under intense scrutiny. Assuming that this involves a controlled and possibly dramatic setting for a film or photography shoot, here's how to shoot the position cameras. And I won't read the whole thing. It was quite a thing, though. It was quite it had a whole breakdown of the primary camera, secondary camera, overhead cameras, where the lights go. I mean, it was pretty interesting. But I would say, we simulated a graduation years ago in a film that I worked on, and we did use probably 100 to 150 China balls, and I would highly recommend that you do that for your graduation. If this is for a graduation, and if you have a graduation in a room where you can do it, where you can hang them all, everyone looked amazing. it was the most amazing. I was like, I just wish I could have this in my house. So just there's all these China balls everywhere, just big soft light. It was amazing.
So in my former life, and when I was early starting on the business, I did a lot of work for the National Speakers Association. And I was in a lot of rooms with people up on a stage like a graduation. I don't think I ever shot an actual graduation, but one of the tools that I used was relatively large Fresnel lights from midpoint in the hall or back of the room or pin rail or wherever I could get them. The advantage of a Fresnel lens on top of a relatively bright light, it is the only fixture I know of that'll project a beam a long way that you can cut and flag off so you don't get spill from where you want the light, and it's still pretty soft. If you use something like an ellipsoidal spotlight, your shadows are going to be very harsh. So I used to, if I was doing a graduation or something like that, set at least 2 crossing relatively large long throw Fresnels, light them from 2 sides, and in most cases, from the audience point of view, which is where I was shooting from, everybody looked really nice. It's just one tool in this process. China balls are great and things like that. The only problem with them is that unless you have the black around one side, they throw a lot of light on everybody, including the people behind them who have the lights kind of hovering in front of them. So that was my solution of choice. Fresnel lensed relatively large fixtures from back a ways and shoot them toward the stage to fill in everybody's faces and make them look decent. Alex, you want to get back in on it?
By the way, the pro version of the China balls is called an Air Star, and you can put. I've used up to I think the most I've used in one event, because I did from that film. I did do a big event with a pretty high profile person in Germany. And I think we used 8 or 10 of them, 6-foot ones, and that's all we lit the crowd with. The whole audience was lit with, and we had directional lighting for the stage, but the crowd was all lit with these 6-foot Air Stars, and it again looked really nice.
I bet. Let's go to the next question.
Next question's from John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. I heard you can use NDI for KVM control on some computer devices. Is that true? How do you do that?
Guy Cochran's going to help us out. Guy?
Yeah, it's true. Here's what it looks like. If you open up your NDI tools, you'll see one that's called Screen Capture. When you click on that, you'll have a little, it looks like let me see if I can pull it up. It's like a little tray down in your system tray. It'll say, actually, let me move down here. It'll say, enable KVM control. So you click on that to enable it. And then on the other computer that you want to actually control that computer from, you open up Studio Monitor. And then once you have Studio Monitor open, you can grab that computer. Let's say that one is the B-Link. This one, and then you'll see this little thing up here that says KVM. And then if you click on that, you have keyboard, video, mouse control, and this one allows you to then move stuff around. So I'm controlling that remote computer now. So that's how you do it.
There you go. You actually saw it live. Thanks, John, for the question. Let's move to the next one.
Jason Robert Shaw in Sarasota, Florida asks, Google Meet Adaptive Audio connects mics from multiple laptops for clearer audio. Thoughts from the panel? And there's a Verge link there.
Interesting approach, Alex.
Yeah, there's a lot of different mic systems that do this, where they have multiple mics and they're using the other mics to figure out what mic they should be listening to and what they should be filtering out. This could work. I don't think it is better than having good mics for everybody. But as you are seeing more and more of a situation where you have 5 or 6 people with laptops in a room jumping into a meeting, and there's all kinds of the bigger problem is they have echo cancellation. So I think one of the things that this is designed to do is be able to know when someone else is speaking and stop using the speaker so if you have 4 people in the room, the biggest thing that it has to do is make sure that if everybody's on, they don't have to remember to turn off their mic, mute themselves. I mean, we've sat in meetings with phones where we all sit there and mute as soon as we finish talking, because I don't like speaker mics, or I don't like in-room, kind of area mics. So even for me, we oftentimes would go into different rooms, but if we were in the same room, we would sit there and just mute and unmute. I'm going to guess that this is eliminating the need for that, as well as using it to pick up some, could probably do some area echo cancel. I mean, a variety of roominess. It could be calculating those things. I have a feeling it won't be better than just having a really good mic or everyone being in their own room. It's not gonna make it better. It's just gonna be it's better than the disaster that conference rooms are right now. So it'll be improving from a 1 out of 10 to probably a 3 or 4 out of 10, which will be a 3 or 4 fold increase.
Courtney?
Yeah, I just briefly looked at the description of it. It is kind of interesting. It detects the fact that there are multiple people. They have to be in the same meeting, in the same room. And then it turns on their microphones and the speakers in their laptops. And it uses the speakers in the laptops to transmit the other side, the remote side of the conversation for anyone who's not in the room. And apparently it uses adaptive mic steering by opening multiple mics at the same time to do echo cancellation or room cancellation, reverb removal. And a lot of those steering microphones, steering arrays, so it basically sets up an array of the different microphones and the different laptops, and not only enables the person who's speaking nearest it, but I think it uses the other microphones to help cancel out or make it more directional, the microphone that's in your laptop even more directional. Of course, you might run into trouble because a lot of laptops these days have 2 microphones and have steering built into the microphones themselves. So it would have to know about that and either disable that and use one of those microphones or incorporate the internal steering in each one of the laptops. It's going to get sticky in any situation there. But I guess in a situation where you don't have any AV control in the room, let's just say you took over a conference room somewhere and it had no AV controls for conducting a meeting. So everybody has their computer. They see the other person on their laptop and they talk through the microphones themselves. So it doing a pinch for something that doesn't have a built-in AV system, conferencing system.
Jeffrey Powers.
Yeah, I was going to say different laptops do different things. Older laptops, as Courtney said, if a laptop's got beamforming already in there, there's got to be a way to turn that off, or else I would think that teams would get confused. The other problem is usually when you log into a Zoom or a Teams, it's your login. That means your microphone, your speaker. And I think this would work best. Well, first of all,
I think this is Meet, not Teams.
Okay, yeah, you're right, Meet. But still, it's the same thing here. It would work best if everybody was wearing headphones because there'd be no speaker. But if there was a way to actually say, I am in a meeting in a room with multiple people where the speaker gets turned off for the other people that have that checkbox, but then anybody that's off-site goes through the speaker, I think that has a better chance of actually working. As Alex said, the whole idea of going into a room that's unknown, untreated, is just going to always cause problems. And then, of course, you're bringing in devices that could be Macs, they could be PCs, they could come from 2010, they could come from 2024.
Alex, what did we get?
Yeah, I think that, you still get a lot further along just treating the room. I've worked with some pretty large companies, billion-dollar company, multi-billion-dollar companies, And one of them that does it particularly effectively basically built almost all of their conference rooms really only hold 2 or 3 people, and they're all designed to link together, and they're designed to link people who are remote because this company, about half of their employees are not at the office. And so they really built the whole thing around people not being at the office, and they had no intention of that. They have engineers all over the world. And so what they did is they built it so, and then they treated all of those rooms to be effective. And that is far better than any kind of technology in the microphones, is to have smaller rooms that don't have any echo, that have good mic systems built into them, that are designed to do this easily. Really makes a huge difference. And I think companies have to stop thinking about the fact that that they have to start thinking about the fact that they're always going to have, and this has been the case for the last decade, not just after COVID, that there's always chunks of people that aren't going to be in the conference room, and that's becoming more and more prevalent. And I think they really need to rethink how they make conference rooms and look at the conference rooms they have now and realize that they're worthless.
And I think we're on to the next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael. Has anyone ever used Proxmox for virtualization? I haven't explored clustering or shared storage due to lack of hardware, but backing up / restoring virtual machines has been a very smooth process.
Proxmox. I've never heard of it. Alex, have you?
Proxmox. No.
Okay.
I don't. This is the first time I heard of it. I downloaded it there. So I don't think anybody. And the reason we're not saving this for Friday or other things, I just don't know anybody that knows about it. So it's interesting, and this is what their website looks like, and we should look at it some more. Maybe even have them on the show if the Friday team feels like it's worthy of their time.
Guy raised his hand here. Guy, you had some thoughts?
Yeah, I hadn't heard of it either until one of Jeff Keithley's cohorts in one of our NDI powwows had mentioned that he had bought one of these MS-01 Minis forums PCs. They look like this. And so he was running some of the NDI tools in Proxmox on this, and he was able to get a GPU somehow virtually, and we were all kind of scratching our heads, but he was showing off the power of this little $679 i9 13th gen computer for $679 that has 2 10 gigabit Ethernet NICs inside of it. So cool computer if you're looking at doing Proxmox. There's people out there running these, running them on these MS-01s with great success and able to do multiple things. So I'm surprised Jeffrey Powers didn't jump in on this one. He's all about virtualization. Come on, Jeffrey, jump in.
I just want to hear the word Proxmox more times said today. Alex, you want to get back in it?
Yeah, and in the chat, Robin Cutshaw says that using Proxmox here works well. HA works well and is easy to configure.
There you go. So it looks like something worth looking into. Let's go on to our next question.
Next one is from Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida. While listening to 20,000 Hertz this morning, I found myself wondering, which podcast do Office Hours crew listen to?
Ooh, we'll start with yourself, Alexander. Are you listening to anything?
I'm always listening to something. I don't have a lot of active podcasts. I used to listen to a lot more, but I seem to have less and less time every week. A lot of Twitch shows. So This Week in Tech, MacBreak Weekly, AI Inside, This Week in Google, Gray Matter, of course. And that's about it. Yeah, that's about it.
Alex?
I'm just reading the library. I don't have a very large library. Of course, I listen to Twit, largely to make sure I know what I need to cover or not cover for MacBreak. But I enjoy Twit. I've been listening to it for a long time. 20,000 Hertz, which is the one that you had mentioned there, and definitely listen to 20,000 Hertz. 99% Invisible, of course. Gray Matter. Gray Matter is the one that I work on with Michael Krasny. The Colin Samir Show, Pattern Breakers. That's with Mike Maples Jr. It's really good. This Week in Tech, as I said before, This American Life, probably the best made podcast when you're looking for the high watermark of production when you have all the monies. It sounds a lot like This American Life. The TED Radio Hour, If Books Could Kill, Video Insiders, which is like 20,000 Hertz, but for video. I don't think I've listened to Modern Finance for recently, because it hasn't been out recently, but Modern Finance was another one that I had there that was from Kevin Rose.
Courtney Gooden.
I haven't heard 20,000 Hertz. I may have to put that on my list.
It's good. It's good. 20,000 Hertz is good.
That's a lot of Hertz. Anyway, I also listen to a lot of Leo Laporte's soon to disappear podcasts. at least if you listen to him. The Mac Break Weekly, of course, with Alex Lindsay, and This Week in Tech and Windows Weekly. I also like one guilty pleasure, Joe Scott Answers with Joe. It comes out on Mondays, and it's always interesting. Joe Scott is a guy in Dallas who will take suggestions on questions that people have about history and unknown phenomena and physics and things like that, and he will do a deep dive on it and present a very deep, maybe 20 to 30-minute discussion on that particular subject. It's well produced, and he does it with a little bit of humor as well. And of course, Radio Lab and This American Life, I'm also addicted to.
Nigel.
I'm slightly depressed about my list of top viewing on YouTube following that list of so either you guys have all edited or I watch a lot more junk than you do. So I will tell you my top ones are Office Hours, obviously. And this may seem strange to people. Vegas Matt's channel where he does, he plays slot machines. Very entertaining, not for the slot machines, but for the conversation. Mac Break Weekly, a couple other Vegas things. Chris Williamson, if you may not enjoy the content, it's very self-discovering content, but when he does the cinema quality episodes, which he doesn't do all the time, I think he's the most interesting, and it's often my first thing I listen to in the morning, but the rest of it just sort of goes downhill from there.
Guy Cochran.
Yeah, Chris Williamson's one of my favorites, but I'm mostly listening to him auditorily through the Apple Watch. So for those of you that don't know, you could take AirPods and just hook them right into the watch and download all your podcasts onto there. So when I'm in the sauna, I go to the Y almost every day, and this is kind of my list. Diary of a CEO, Modern Wisdom, that's one we were just talking about, School of Greatness. Another one that's one of my favorites is Huberman Lab and All In. If you're not listening to All In, I highly suggest All In. And then there's a couple other ones, but those are the major ones that I enjoy.
Jeffrey Powers.
I don't listen to podcasts. Podcasts are dead. I'm kidding. So to me, I'm one of those people, and I'm giving a good example of podcasts I really don't listen to, are shows that become ramblish and very unfocused. And sometimes, depending on the content, I'll definitely listen to them, but they're basically going to be one-offs. As on the YouTube side, there's a show called Screen Crush, which is, I know there's a lot of people that are watching here, but basically if you need your Marvel fix, trying to catch up on what's going on with the Marvel shows without having to watch Marvel or DC, or they're going to be covering The Boys, they just covered some of the Walking Dead stuff with AMC. They do a great job in really deep diving the show and talking about how how they use the comic books to make the episodes, the lore, the history, and everything like that. So those are the types of shows that I really enjoy, because there's a lot of thought, there's a lot of planning that's put into it, and even if the script's not 100%, and it's still got a lot of information that keeps it moving forward, and that's what I really like.
Alex, you want to come back?
How I built this with Guy Raz is really good. Interviews with folks, and they've had ones with like Schultz from Starbucks, the Schultz from Starbucks, and the Instagram. How I built this, just pure gold. Like I did just go and listen to those today. It's great.
And I honestly don't listen to podcasts, only because, as most of you know, I have been exploring audiobooks for the last couple of years in terms of performing in them. And that means that I want to listen to them. So I do about an hour and 20 minutes a day of exercise to audiobooks. So I just listen to novels almost exclusively. Alex, you want to come back in?
The only thing that's interesting is how we all use audio, and I'm always curious about how other people use audio. Just to take this sideways just for a second, for me, it's that I listen to news over audio, which is NOAA. And so that has it's a smattering of everything from MIT to foreign affairs to, whatever. And so I listen to that. Probably that's my first line of like, this is what I'm listening to. And then I usually listen to podcasts. And then I'm about 120 books deep that are waiting to be listened to. So I always have audio that's kind of available to me to watch or to listen to. And since I walk about an hour and a half a day, I have, kind of worked through that. The problem that I've had now is that I'm talking to ChatGPT most of the time. Like I sit there and chat with ChatGPT while I'm walking, asking it random questions. But I think that it's interesting how we're all using it. I think that we're listening to ChatGPT talk back. I think that we are probably a year, maybe 2 years away from every article that you see on the internet being able to be read by the OS. So this is, I don't know if Apple's going to do anything about this WWDC, but I think within the next 2, you're going to see something with AI that just says on the device, if you say read this article, it'll just read it out loud as part of what it does, because I think that so many of us want to do that, and that has a huge impact on display ads. Like, if people can just go to a website and say, read me the website, and it smartly goes through and gets rid of all the, doesn't read the ads, it doesn't read the page numbers, it doesn't read the bibliography, it just cuts through a PDF and reads whatever you're in. That will dramatically change how we bring in content.
Let's go to our next question.
From the QR code, David Brady from New York City, been seeing trucks rolling around with LED sides for ads. What's the cost and durability of these kind of systems?
Alex, start us off.
Yeah, I don't know what they are. Typically, they're not putting the latest and greatest of the LED walls in, and you can get them relatively inexpensive, and those aren't very large. My guess is it's somewhere between $6,000 to $8,000 for the LED wall there. It probably pays for itself once a week. So it's regardless of how, and those are pretty durable outdoor. They're usually covered with plexiglass. Not all of them, but some of them are. But they're oftentimes, if you look at them, they're 3, 4, 5 mil screens, and those are pretty cheap. If you get them out of China. So and I know that some of the organizations that do these display ads don't make the person driving the truck pay anything. Either they build the whole truck and hire someone, or they contract with folks and say, we'll put it on and, we'll put it in your truck and we'll pay you to drive it around. Like, it's not like they absorb all the costs of making that actually happen. So we were working with one in San Francisco, because a lot of them in San Francisco too. So anyway, and in that case, the LED wall company the truck driver and the truck driver owns his own truck and gets paid to drive around, and they install the whole thing into his truck, and they take the money they're taking, and they give him money that he gets, and that he just drives around all day listening to podcasts. So,
Courtney?
Yeah, there's organizations out there that are designed for this type of media, like billboard outdoor advertising. There's this company called LED Truck Media, where you can actually buy the trucks, or you can contact them for display on their trucks in the field. It does have trucks for sale, so it does take 15 kilovolts, I think, of power generator, 15 kilowatt generator on board to power those things, so they're not that green. But this is a solution, for example, in certain cities like Los Angeles, outlawed LED billboards. Unless they're part of a part of the edifice, the sign on a actual building for the same company, store, for example, can have an LED sign out front, but you can't use LED billboards. Were legal for about 2 or 3 years, and they declared them a blight in the county of LA, outlawed them. They had to pull them all down. So this may be a way of skirting those local laws that prevent LED billboards. It seems to me they would be kind of distracting, and then sooner or later somebody's going to cause a crash because somebody was looking at the ad on the truck next to them rather than paying attention to their driving, and kill somebody, and then they're going to be outlawed.
Alex?
Yeah, it's funny. In Marin, where I live, all billboards are outlawed. so when you drive out of Marin, you're like, hey, I'm out of Marin. As soon as you cross over into the Sonoma county line, it's done. But I do think that these are really interesting. Where they're really popular is around events. So if you have a conference or something like that, you'll see a lot of them driving past Javits Center or other things, because you've got a bunch of people there, and it's an easy way to strafe the audience with information. So I think that it's They're a really interesting business model, and I always find it fascinating. I don't know if anyone took pictures of it, but there was a truck at NAB that opened up a giant, like cinema-sized, you can't drive with it, but cinema-sized LED wall right near our thing. It was just the most amazing thing. I needed to own it, but I needed to own it, but I didn't. I was like, I don't even have somewhere to store it, even if I had the money to buy it. But it looked like it would be so much fun to have like a mobile theater.
When I lived in Scottsdale, the neighboring town, Tempe, is a college town, Arizona State University. And for the last 10 years, I've been seeing these trucks prowling Mill Avenue where all the people are gathering and bar hopping and the rest of that. I think it's a good play if you're trying to do brand awareness, particularly among a young post-college audience. And so I think depending on where you live and what your lifestyle is, you will either see a ton of these or you will never see them because they're targeted to specific messages, to specific demographics in most of my experience. And I think they're pretty effective. They're very bright and very colorful, and they spend a lot of time working on the messaging for the sides of the trucks. Some of them do all three sides so that they have a separate ad running in the back of the truck. And I've never seen them split running two different ads on the two sides of the truck because I'm sure they want to turn around and give metrics to their possible sponsors as to how much time their ads were seen and approximately how many people saw them. But it's an interesting side of the advertising business. Let's move on to the next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, the new Microsoft Surface laptops are running on ARM processors. Do you think we'll see Windows-based production applications like vMix deliver ARM builds like macOS app makers have?
Nigel, what do you think?
So I think there's a huge important function of time here. So some of them will probably work today, or Microsoft actually announced a sort of translation service a la the way Apple used to do it. So some of them are going to move across. They may not be powered enough. I think the next element is eventually they will get enough power to do it. But I think the third element of this is in a production environment, you need to make sure your workflow makes sense. So running something on a standalone ARM machine may or may not make sense to workflow. But really it's a function of time that it may not happen now, but at some point there'll be enough power.
Jeffrey Powers.
So I talked to Tim Vandenberg about this last year at NAB. It's not as much about the CPU as it is about the GPU when it comes to vMix. However, I did look it up, and yeah, vMix has been tested on ARM and says it can run it on ARM. So you do have options, but it's going to really depend on what you have for a GPU inside. Other apps, there's a lot of other apps that will just work right out of the box when it comes to this because they don't really care as much about the processor. They care about the instruction set that's in Windows. And so for that point, it needs to be very, very specific. Like if ARM adds NPU, how it utilize the NPU, and if it doesn't have if the computer doesn't have an NPU chip, then you just can't use it with that product. So, but for the most part, a lot of software is run through Windows instruction set, not the ARM chipset.
Courtney?
Yeah, you got to remember that the NPU cores are almost identical to the NVIDIA GPU cores, so they're the same. That's why they use a lot of NVIDIA chipsets in neural network neural processing, because the GPU cores are pretty much interchangeable with the NPU cores. So I think these new ones, the Tegra chips that Qualcomm has come out with, several laptop manufacturers have already announced production. They will be out by the end of the year. Lenovo, of course, Microsoft just announced their Surface series of laptops with running on these Tegra chips. And currently, they're all running Windows 11 and supposedly will run all the x86 with a translation layer in there, which may be a little bit slower, so the benchmarks aren't out yet on running older apps that are designed for the x86 architecture on the newer ARM-based chips. So previously, Windows' attempt to run ARM and the RT was a disaster, mainly because it was kind of compatible but not completely compatible, and so that didn't work in the corporate world where they're using a lot of custom written software that was written for all the Intel chips, and if it wouldn't run on the new on the new laptops or the new desktops, they couldn't adapt it, and that's what killed the previous versions. Hopefully this way they've got the translation layer worked out so that it can still run legacy software for the time being, maybe not as fast, but fast enough to handle business applications. We'll see. I'm going to order one when they come out. They're still kind of pricey. They're in the $1,000 to $1,500 range for these laptops, but they get much better battery life. And you'll see all the major manufacturers, all the major software manufacturers are going to automatically recompile a lot of their stuff for this ARM architecture, so that you'll see all the Office products, all the Microsoft major products will have an ARM native version by the time these are released.
Let's go to the next question.
Next question is from the QR code. We have Ignacio Madero from Madrid. Does anyone in the panel know of measurement tools for 4G, 5G, and Wi-Fi signals in the 600 megahertz to 6 gigahertz frequency spectrum? Is the Tiny SA Ultra a good tool for that?
And Jeffrey Powers is going to start us off here. Jeffrey?
I'm not sure about the Tiny SA, but there are several different hardware options. If you wanted a phone option, there are some for Android. Wi-Fi detector, I think it's called, is one of them. One of the reasons why I have had an Android phone for since the beginning is you can then test out to see what other Wi-Fi signals are out there and what the ranges, all the ranges and ports that they're using, so you can fine-tune your Wi-Fi so there's no real overlap from there. But I'm not sure about Tiny SA.
Alex?
I don't think any of the Tiny SA go over 5.3, I believe, but there are some other ones that you can find that you have to be looking for spectrum analyzers that go up to 6 or 6.2.
Courtney?
Yeah, I agree with Alex. 5.3 is the top end of the Tiny Ultra. So if you're looking specifically for that Wi-Fi 6, you may be out of luck. There are probably apps that you can get on a phone that has what supports Wi-Fi 6 to do analysis of basically the phone frequencies and the Wi-Fi frequencies in your neighborhood, but they're not going to be as good as a complete spectrum analyzer.
Real quickly, I guess Guy wanted to get into this, and then Jeffrey. Guy?
Yeah, it depends on what you're doing, if this is for you or for somebody else, and what spectrum that you really need to nail down. Like some of the tools in the Ubiquiti Dream Machine are shocking what it can do as far as measuring what's out there. There's some very robust built-in tools once you have an AP hooked up nearby. But again, what's it matter? Is it for you or is it for an event, like where you want to see if you're interfering with some like hotel ballrooms, Wi-Fi, if you bring in your own pucks? There's so many more options here. Like my son works for a telecom, and I was surprised to see that there's nearby repeaters on telephone poles nearby, and there's a free website or app that you can get where it'll show you where those are. So I didn't know that information was freely available online.
Jeffrey, you have a quick follow-up?
Yeah, I know AT&T also has that through an app. But if you're going to use a phone app, you got to make sure that the phone also supports Wi-Fi 6. Otherwise, it can't read what it doesn't know.
Let's go to the next question.
Next question is from Chris Widener in Indianapolis, Indiana. Ecamm's new beta has excellent Zoom integration. Does anyone know how the resolution bump works for Zoom Rooms after all the updates lately?
Guy, do you have any insight?
If you could ask this question again tomorrow to make the absolute confirmation. It's been working for a long time. For those of you that don't know, in the past, what has happened if you had a free Zoom account, which is limited in resolution to basically 360p, with a Zoom room coming in and joining the meeting, it'll bump it to 720p, which looks great. But if you just request from Zoom, if you have a paid account and request from Zoom, you can go ahead and get that bump up to at least 720. And if you have 10 accounts, you can get up to 1080. But yeah, it's one of those things where you got to ask the question again tomorrow and I'll confirm. I was trying to pull it up right now, but I couldn't fast enough. And then in regards to Ecamm, I'm surprised you're finding it solid, because I'm in the beta as well. And in the Facebook group, there's lots of challenges, let's just say, compared to some of the other ones that I've been beta on. So look at some of the other options out there. Mimo Live's solid with the Zoom integration. Try that beta and you'll see.
Alex?
And of course, it's still in beta. But we will have Ecamm on in June when they're ready to pop it out, and you'll be able to ask them directly.
Excellent. Let's go to our next question.
From the QR code, we have Gene J. Anthony in Skokie, Illinois. What would be some of the best ways for handling children at our event? We have many dedicated younger people who will be participating or on stage in our rally and would like them to get the most out of the event.
Alex.
Obviously, it depends on the age, but I've done a lot of events with a lot of folks with a lot of different ages. The big thing is that you do need something for kids to do. so you can't, corralling them into something and having them sit, is something that can be pretty challenging in today's environment. As a kid, I was trained very intensely to sit quietly for very long periods of time when at events, but I think that's not cultural at this point. So really thinking about, and this just gets down to really good event management. The reality is adults just learn to deal with the pain of being there and watching something really boring for a long period of time, and then doing something. And so you need to make sure that you have the somewhere for the kids to do stuff, but know that they're going to sit there, but you're not going to have them do it for very long. So give yourself, we usually want to have them interact with something, in less than 15 minutes, and really just, have something that they can interact with, something that gets their attention again, or we have them somewhere else, and somewhere where they can do that, if that matters. And so, but I think that they don't enjoy it, and they oftentimes can be a little disruptive if you don't give them something to do relatively frequently. So that just think about, and again, make it interesting. And you can keep their attention. Taylor Swift evidently is able to do that with her movie. So it's not that they can't do it. It's that you have to look at, if they're not paying attention and they're not excited, it's not their fault. Don't take on the accountability that it might be something that you need to design for. And I know that's why you're asking the question, but you really want to be looking at, how they're reacting and find ways that's going to be interesting and visceral and engaging. And you really want to be focused on those things, not just the information that you want to put up or that you have to do these ceremonies or whatever, but really how are you going to make it something that they value?
And I'm just going to say everything I know about handling children at events comes out of a Disney cruise. Actually, we took 2, and they are the best people I've ever seen. And the lessons I learned are, if they're with their parents and the parents are in control of them all the time, fine, it's not your responsibility. If for any reason the kids are going to be by themselves, Disney is brilliant about this, because I noticed that all the kid gathering play places were interior in the ship. They literally lock them away so no kid can wander out, get toward a rail and play. They don't want, so it's always safety first for them. And I think I take that with the kind of events I used to manage. You always want the kids to be in a place where they can be controlled and watched over constantly, so you don't have that wandering out and getting yourself into trouble. Think of it in terms of safety and liability first. Everything else secondary to that. Hopefully it goes well for you, Gene. Let's go to our next question.
Talalik Lopez Waterman in Dallas, Texas asks, if you were to scan photos, documents, and artwork to use in a documentary, how would you do it?
Courtney, start us off.
I'd use a regular flatbed scanner. I think most scanners that are built into most multifunction printers these days are 1200 by 2400 DPI, which is probably definitely enough resolution to use in a video production that's going to be HD or even 4K. So I think that would give you high enough resolution, especially if you're not going to be zooming in to take just a very small portion of that picture. If you are, then you might want to opt for a higher resolution scanner. But a linear scanner can probably give you better resolution than just taking a photograph of it on a copy stand.
Guy Cochran.
Yeah, I used to do this for a living in the mid-90s while I was in college, and it depends on the size of the artwork. If you have access to a good flatbed scanner, that's one way. We used to use drum scanners and scan stuff really fast, and for what we call large art, we had a copy stand, and it had 4 lights in the corners, and what I used was a medium format camera with a digital back. So if you want the highest quality, I would say to farm it out to somebody that has these, because the ability to put large art, and then we had a piece of glass that would smush it down, and that way it would be perfectly flat and vacuum seal it and everything in there. And so when you shot, it was just perfect because the lighting's perfect, the angle's perfect, so you got to watch out for glare and things like that. I would probably recommend, if you're going to do a bunch of this and you would do it yourself, is to just rent a camera like the either a Hasselblad, one of these Fuji GFX 50s is a medium format camera that'll get you pretty high resolution, or the GFX 100 is another one that I got a chance to shoot with, and man, that camera is spectacular. So those are a few of the options that I would recommend.
Alex Lindsay.
And I think the only thing really to look at also is if you are going to use a flatbed scanner, are you going to do transparencies with it? So you can do that nowadays. You can get that kind of resolution. The one that I own is this one. This is the Epson 850. I think I bought it, as you can see, a long time ago, almost 10 years ago. It's still working. The 600, I think, is the new one, and it's and this one does 4800 DPI, both for the images, but also for film. To be able to scan it. You can see it's got some forms to make that actually happen. But if you don't need that and you're really just going toward, scanning flat things, if we go down here, you can see that the price drops, pretty dramatically. Let's see. I don't know why this is compare these items. There's another one here. Anyway, it was different a second ago. Thank you, Amazon. But you'll see that it drops to you can get 4800 DPI without the transparency settings. It gets down to like $350 really quickly, but now at $350 you're talking 40, but I would be looking for 4800 DPI at this point. There's a lot of scanners out there that can do that.
Let's go to the next question.
Next question is from Chris Widener in Indianapolis, Indiana. Microsoft's new ARM push means lots of AV equipment won't have compatible drivers. How will this affect your workflow?
Jeffrey Powers.
Once again, it's not as much about the hardware as it is about the software at this point. Anything that's being added, in ARM, will basically be something that you'd have to worry about. But when it comes to plugging in a USB device, Windows has been running ARM for many years. They stopped doing it, but it's not like they stopped doing it. I had an HP Spectre that was on an ARM. I just decommissioned an X310, which was a home server that ran on ARM chips. So on the basics, the USB will work. The Bluetooth is all software controlled, so that'll work. And of course, they're different chips. Windows is designed to handle whatever a board is going to throw at them for the most part. There's going to be the odd driver, definitely, from some board that you've never heard of before. But if you stick with major manufacturers like HP, like Dell, they'll have solutions for any type of hardware that needs to be added.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, thankfully over the years there's been a consolidation in printer manufacturers and peripheral manufacturers to such that the foundational drivers that are available with Windows run on most of the majors out of the box. It's the small, like Jeffrey says, it's the small custom pieces of hardware that is, not using the foundational drivers, and Windows has to write their own custom drivers. Then you're going to run into maybe a year or so delay and be able to get those drivers out the window. It depends on how quickly adopted the new ARM chips are in the world. To see that will force the individual peripheral manufacturers to write new drivers for this platform.
And I think we have time for one more if we handle it quickly.
Next one's for me. If a B4 broadcast lens designed for 2/3 sensors is adapted for micro four thirds, what would the image output be?
Alex?
So the B4 is going to expand it there. You may see some, because it's designed for 2/3. So you want to get a higher quality one. In the past, we've used, I believe, Metabones has been the one that we've used in the past to make that actually work. There are cheaper ones, Photodoix or whatever makes one, but I wouldn't use that. If you're on a Blackmagic camera, you definitely want to use the Blackmagic adapter, for the larger URSAs. It's really built for that. It's not very hard to put it there. Again, if you zoom all the way out, you may see some vignetting. That's the on a wide angle. But we've used them a fair bit. So it's been successful for us. Again, with the higher quality glass, you shouldn't see that vignetting because it's designed to re-project that against the micro four thirds. And we've definitely used a lot of B4 glass with our micro four thirds cameras.
Yeah, basically what Alex says. I would note those lenses, B4 lenses, are designed for electronic control, zoom rockers, and things like that. So make sure that if you're using it on something other than the camera it was designed for, the class of camera, that if you need any of that pass-through of data, you can get that. That's a piece of the puzzle here. It's time. We're getting very close to ready to go to the next section. In just a minute, we're going to be moving on to our second hour, which today we're talking to Sven Pape, who's the runner of This Guy Edits. He has a lot of subscribers, and we'll be talking about editing. Tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific, David Pogue, tech correspondent from CBS Sunday Morning, is going to join Alex for another fireside chat right here on the same link you used to get into the show. Mimo Lab after this show, also the Isadora Lab. Those both happen on Thursdays here. And that's pretty much what's happening. Don't forget, after hours every day right after the main show is done. We move on to educational content on all sorts of topics. We'll be right back with Sven. I'm very excited to welcome Sven Pape